What is up everyone, welcome to How to Draw Hands. Make sure to head over to the website and grab the free worksheet, print that out, and if you're working digitally, and just pull this document into whatever software you're using. We're going to practice drawing hands in 5 stages, and you can see the 5 stages at the top of the first page, and this way we can start very simple and then build complexity on top of that. Always start simple when you can and add complexity slowly over time, that way you can get adjusted, practice the skills necessary before moving on to more complex hands. On page 1, we're going to start with the central box of the hand. So you can see these examples, how I've broken down the main body of the hand into the simple box. Copy from the examples, don't be shy about erasing. Once you've completed these exercises, make sure to practice in your sketchbooks to make sure that you're retaining the information, and also give yourself the room to get adjusted to drawing these shapes. It's not easy to learn, so don't try to jump ahead. Take time to practice each stage. The central box of the hand is fairly thin, so make sure not to draw it too thick. If you look at your hand in front of your face, you can see how the side is very thin, and across the front, like if you look at your palm, it's much wider than it is thick. Make sure to capture the proportions properly, draw in the cushions of the hand, and then when you're done that, practice in your sketchbook and then move on to page number 2. On page number 2, we're going to add in the thumb, so you can see how we're going to be adding in each of the elements slowly, that way we can get adjusted to the complexity of the entire hand, right? So this time we're adding in the thumb. The thumb is made up of a triangular box, a cylinder, and a tapered cylinder. You can see at the top left, in the top left example, you can see how I've broken this down into these simple forms. So on the left side of this worksheet, I've broken these elements down into their separate forms, right? So you can see how the thumb is broken down into these 3 shapes. And then on the right side, you can see how I've connected all the shapes to create this organic form, right? So make sure that you understand the stuff on the left side before drawing the organic forms. Try to practice these separate shapes in your sketchbook before doing the right side. It can be really frustrating to try to draw these 3D shapes. On the left side, you can see how these shapes are hard to draw. They're not very easy to get, especially if you're new to drawing. Drawing in 3D shapes that's not something that comes naturally to anyone. So make sure to give yourself the room and time to practice these shapes. Drawing the triangular box, the cylinder, and the tapered cylinder. Try to practice each of those elements separately if you're not used to drawing them at all. And that way you'll be able to develop the skills to draw anything in 3D, right? So being able to break things down into these simple forms first is a skill that translates to everything that you do in drawing if you're trying to draw in 3D things, right? Like if you're drawing in 2D, like completely 2D, and you're doing just iconic stuff, that's a different topic. But if you're trying to draw something that has form that is 3D, like the hand, then you're going to have to learn how to draw these simple forms, and that will make everything easier, right? So the more time you spend practicing the basic forms, the easier it will be to learn to draw anything that's in 3D space. Once you're done this page, move on to the next one. Make sure to take your time. This is not something that will come quickly. This is going to take some practice. But once you're done this page, move on to the next one. On page number 3, we're going to draw in individual fingers, and we're going to practice drawing individual fingers before we try to add them to the entirety of the hand. This way we can get used to drawing the individual fingers. That's the hardest part of drawing hands, right? So getting used to drawing these cylinders in 3D space is the hardest part of drawing hands. Like having to draw these fingers together is very difficult. So we're going to practice drawing individual fingers first before we try to draw them all together. The fingers are made up of 2 cylinders and a tapered cylinder, right? So on the left side, you can see I've broken it down into its simple forms, and on the right side, we're going to practice organic forms. Make sure to take your time practicing the cylinders. This is not easy. I struggle quite a bit just making the worksheet. That's like drawing these simple forms in 3D space is the hard part of drawing hands. So take your time with this. Don't try to rush through it, and use an eraser as much as possible. Like if you mess up, don't be shy about erasing. One thing you want to pay attention to is when you draw the organic forms is that the front side, the palm side of the fingers has a cushion. So you can see on the top right example how the cushions on the right side are rounded, while the back side of the fingers are way straighter, right? So I like to think of the finger as having a belly on each section, right? So the back side is very flat, like your back, and then there's the belly side, which is rounded. Make sure to try to capture this. This will help the fingers look more organic, and that's the key to going from the left side where they're simplified forms and then onto the right side to make them feel alive. Once you're done this page, move on to page number 4. We're almost done this. Almost made it there. Good job already. On page number 4, we're drawing in the mitten. So this is like a simplified hand. We're trying to combine as many fingers as possible and simplifying it down, right? So you can see at the top, I've drawn an example of a full hand and how I'm simplifying down into this mitten shape. And this is really useful if you're trying to capture the general gesture, right? Like if you're doing a rough drawing for an illustration, or if you're doing figure drawing like in person and you're trying to capture the hand really quickly, this is really useful. And this can also work as a guideline for drawing the full hand, right? So if you draw in the mitten first, it's much easier to add in the fingers and try to capture an organic gesture. When possible, you want to group as many of the fingers together as possible, right? So you can see on the top left example, I've grouped 3 of the fingers together, but the left index finger is separated because I can't group that together without making it look wrong, right? So, and then on the second example, you can see the fingers are grouped together in groups of 2. You see the 2 groups separated out. Try to group as many of them as together as you can, but make sure to still capture individual fingers where it's necessary, right? So some of the fingers are so far from the other groups that we're drawing them individually. Once you're done this page, I highly recommend that you look up some hand drawing references, right? Like photo references, and then try to break them down into these mittens, right? So that you get used to simplifying down. That way your brain can easily draw in the guidelines and before you draw in the full hand, right? Drawing this step as a guideline will make everything easier, especially if you're drawing illustrations where you're trying to draw from memory. Being able to capture a general gesture before looking at reference will make the process much quicker. So this step is hugely important in a drawing process where you're trying to be efficient. So take your time with this step. Once you're done this and you practice, move on to the last page. And we're on to the last page. Good job. We made it to the last page of this workbook, which is, it's not very long, but it captures all the 5 steps that I think are useful to learning how to draw hands. So on this page, we're drawing full hands. Make sure to take your time with this. This is not easy. You can see how even I'm going to struggle with this. You can probably see me on the screen erasing tons because this is not easy, right? These are the same hands that we drew in the last step, right? So we drew the mitten stage of the same hand. So you've got some practice drawing the basic guidelines for these hands. So draw the guidelines again before drawing in the full fingers. Don't be shy about using as many guidelines and references as possible. Don't be shy about erasing. These are all things and tools that we use to get the best product possible, right? So masters, use reference, use guidelines. This is all part of the drawing process. Don't try to draw things straight out of your head without using all the tools necessary to get you the best end product possible. And that's it for these worksheets. I hope this was useful to you. I know that this is a very condensed version of a drawing tutorial. You know, I didn't go over a lot of details, but I think drawing from examples is the best way to practice drawing because it's all about getting hands-on practice, no pun intended. Make sure to draw from references and practice each stage. Get comfortable with each stage before moving forward, right? So even if you went through this worksheets, there's probably a few stages that are very hard for you, like maybe drawing the cylinders was very complicated. Then make sure to go back and draw that step over and over again until you get comfortable with it. That will make everything else easier. Don't try to draw full hands without a little bit of slow practice at first. Simplify down as much as possible. If this was useful to you, make sure to head over to the website and grab more free worksheets and tutorials. And if you want to stay in touch, sign up for the mailing list over on the website. That's the best way for me to be in contact with you as I release more tutorials, more free content. Head over to the website, do that. Let's be friends. You can also subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I don't know what these arms are, what I'm doing, but hey, I'm learning. See you guys in the next one.